to get your salt rising to work in very cold weather. And now, having digressed while I gave you my recipes, I shall step back to my party within the stoup, which, I can assure you, was very pleasant, and most cordially disposed to enjoy the meeting. We had books and drawings, and good store of pretty Indian toys, the collection of many long voyages to distant shores to look at and admire. Soon after sunset we walked down through the woods to the landing at the lake shore, where we found our bark canoe ready to convey us home. During our voyage, just at the head of the rapids, our attention was drawn to some small object in the water, moving very swiftly along. There were various opinions as to the swimmer, some thinking it to be a water snake, others a squirrel or a muskrat. A few swift strokes of the paddle brought us up so as to intercept the passage of the little voyager. It proved to be a fine red squirrel, bound on a voyage of discovery from a neighbouring island. The little animal, with a courage and address that astonished his pursuers, instead of seeking safety in a different direction, sprung lightly on the point of the uplifted paddle, and from thence with a bound to the head of my astonished baby, and having gained my shoulder, leaped again into the water, and made direct for the shore, never having deviated a single point from the line he was swimming in when he first came in sight of our canoe. I was surprised and amused by the agility and courage displayed by this innocent creature. I could hardly have given credence to the circumstance had I not been an eye witness of its conduct, and moreover been wetted plentifully on my shoulder by the sprinkling of water from his coat. Perhaps you may think my squirrel anecdote incredible, but I can vouch for the truth of it on my own personal experience, as I not only saw but also felt it. The black squirrels are most lovely and elegant animals, considerably larger than the red, the grey, and the striped. The latter are called by the Indians chitmunks. We were robbed greatly by these little depredators last summer. The red squirrels used to carry off great quantities of our Indian corn, not only from the stalks while the crop was ripening, but they even came into the house through some chinks in the log walls, and carried off vast quantities of the grain, stripping it very adroitly from the cob, and conveying the grain to their storehouses in some hollow log or subterranean granary. These little animals are very fond of the seeds of pumpkins, and you will see the soft creatures whisking about among the cattle, carrying away the seeds as they are scattered by the beasts in breaking the pumpkins. They also delight in the seeds of the sunflowers, which grow to a gigantic height in our gardens and clearings. The fowls are remarkably fond of the sunflower seeds, and I saved the plants with the intention of laying up a good store of winter food for my poor chicks. One day I went to cut the ripe heads, the largest of which was the size of a large dessert plate, but found two wicked red squirrels busily employed gathering in the seeds, not for me, be sure, but themselves. Not contented with picking out the seeds, these little thieves dexterously sawed through the stalks, and conveyed away whole heads at once. So bold were they that they would not desist when I approached till they had secured their object, and encumbered with a load twice their weight, of their own agile bodies, ran with a swiftness along the rails, and over root, stump, and log, till they eluded my pursuit. Great was the indignation expressed by this thrifty little pair on returning again for another load to find the plant divested of the heads. I had cut what remained, and put them in a basket in the sun on a small block in the garden, close to the open glass door, on the steps of which I was sitting shelling some seed beans, when the squirrels drew my attention to them by their sharp scolding notes, elevating their fine feathery tails, and expressing the most lively indignation at the invasion. They were not long before they discovered the Indian basket with the ravished treasure. A few rapid movements brought the little pair to the rails within a few paces of me and the sunflower heads. Here, then, they paused, and sitting up, looked in my face with the most imploring gestures. I was too much amused by their perplexity to help them, but turning away my head to speak to the child, they darted forward, and in another minute had taken possession of one of the largest of the heads, which they conveyed away, first one carrying it a few yards, then the other. it being too bulky for one alone to carry it far at a time. In short, I was so well amused by watching their manoeuvres that I suffered them to rob me of all my store. I saw a little family of tiny squirrels at play in the spring on the top of a hollow log, and really I think they were, without exception, the liveliest, most graceful creatures I ever looked upon. The flying squirrel is a native of our woods, and exceeds in beauty, to my mind, any of the tribe. Its colour is the softest, most delicate tint of grey, the fur thick and short, and as silken as velvet. The eyes, like all the squirrel kind, are large, full, and soft; the whiskers and long hair about the nose black. The membrane that assists this little animal in its flight is white and delicately soft in texture, like the fur of the chinchilla. It forms a ridge of fur between the fore and hind legs. The tail is like an elegant broad grey feather. I was agreeably surprised by the appearance of this exquisite little creature. The pictures I had seen given it a most inelegant and bat like look, almost disgusting. The young ones are easily tamed, and are very playful and affectionate when under confinement. How my little friend Emily would delight in such a pet! Tell her if ever I should return to dear old England I will try to procure one for her; but at present she must be contented with the stuffed specimens of black, red, and striped squirrel which I enclose in my parcel. I wish I could offer you any present more valuable, but our arts and manufactures being entirely British, with the exception of the Indians' toys, I should find it a difficult matter to send you anything worth your attention. Therefore I am obliged to have recourse to the natural productions of our woods as tokens of remembrance to our friends at home, for it is ever thus we speak of the land of our birth. You wish to know if I am happy and contented in my situation, or if my heart pines after my native land. I will answer you candidly, and say that, as far as regards matters of taste, early association, and all those holy ties of kindred and old affections that make home in all countries, and among all nations in the world, a hallowed spot, I must ever give the preference to Britain. On the other hand, a sense of the duties I have chosen, and a feeling of conformity to one's situation, lessen the regret I might be inclined to indulge in. Besides, there are new and delightful ties that bind me to Canada. I have enjoyed much domestic happiness since I came hither, and is it not the birthplace of my dear child? Have I not here first tasted the rapturous delight arising from maternal feelings? When my eye rests on my smiling darling, or I feel his warm breath upon my cheek, I would not exchange the joy that fills my breast for any pleasure the world could offer me. But this feeling is not confined to the solitude of your Canadian forests, my dear friend, you will say. I know it, but here there is nothing to interfere with your little nursling. You are not tempted by the pleasures of a gay world to forget your duties as a mother. There is nothing to supplant him in your heart. His presence endears every place, and you learn to love the spot that gave him birth, and to think with complacency upon the country, because it is his country; and in looking forward to his future welfare, you naturally become doubly interested in the place that is one day to be his. Perhaps I rather estimate the country by my own feelings; and when I find, by impartial survey of my present life, that I am to the full as happy, if not really happier, than I was in the old country, I cannot but value it. Possibly, if I were to enter into a detail of the advantages I possess, they would appear of a very negative character in the eyes of persons revelling in all the splendour and luxury that wealth could procure, in a country in which nature and art are so eminently favourable towards what is usually termed the pleasures of life. But I never was a votary at the shrine of luxury or fashion. A round of company, a routine of pleasure, were to me sources of weariness, if not of disgust. "There's nothing in all this to satisfy the heart," says Schiller, and I admit the force of the sentiment. I was too much inclined to spurn with impatience the fetters that etiquette and fashion are.